we're going to focus on keeping people on the farm. So I'm Jennifer Wright. I'm with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. I grew up on my family farm in southwestern Ontario and have been working in HR a lot in the ag sector over the past 20 years or so. So as we start thinking about why it's important to retain the workers that we have on our farm, just a brief overview of the current labor situation, where there definitely is a labor shortage in agriculture across the country, and that labor shortage is having a direct impact on the amount of sales lost, as well as the impact of workers that you do have on your farm and the amount of output that they're required to do to meet the demand. And looking forward, that shortage is going to increase. The same would be happening in Nova Scotia as well. When we drill down and look at the provincial numbers, the same type of thing is happening with the labor shortage and the loss in sales, forecasting out that labor shortage continuing to grow. A great thing that comes through in Nova Scotia, though, is that voluntary turnover rate is much lower in Nova Scotia than the Canadian average. And so as employers, you must be doing some good things already to keep your workers that you do have. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what else you can do to ensure you have those HR best practices to retain your workers. And so why is HR management important? We've covered this a little bit as a theme, I guess, over the last seminars that we've done. But really, it's just that reminder that good HR management practices ensure that you have the right people in place, the right skills in place, that you are acknowledging the impact that the people have on your farm to the success of your firm and the profitability as well. Also, having those good HR practices in place will help you be that employer of choice in the community, and it makes sure that you're reducing your risk and liability by adhering to the legislative requirements as well. And so when we look at HR management, and there's lots of different components to it. We've covered many of these components through our through the 3 webinars that we've held already. But really, when we look at all of these components, they all contribute to how to keep workers on your farm, whether it be from that recruitment and selection process and ensuring that you're selecting the right person to work on the farm, planning, legislation, all of those type of things contribute to retention of your workers. HR management also helps address employee turnover, and we're going to talk a little bit why that's important and what impact that has on your bottom line. So if you have a low turnover rate, then you're able to, you're retaining your workers, and you're not out there looking for new people all the time. That direct cost of turnover that happens when you are replacing someone comes through things like if you're advertising or if you're using an agency to help find the people, the cost of hiring, orientation, and getting them up to speed so that they're as productive and efficient at the job as someone that's been there for a while. As well, sometimes with turnover, there is that separation cost that employers incur as well. You also want to look at that indirect cost, so that ramp up time, disruption with clients or within the team. Other workers may be feeling a little bit unsettled with if you have a high turnover rate. Also, when someone leaves, the workers that are still there typically have to work a little bit harder to fill the gap of the work that needs to be done while they wait for the replacement to come. So all that type of thing does have a direct and indirect cost. And then when we look at turnover, there are 3 main types that you need to be thinking about. That voluntary turnover is when the employee decides to leave. Involuntary is when you need to have someone, leave because of performance or behavior or inappropriate conduct. And unavoidable turnover is something that you just is going to happen. Things like retirement or that type of thing, that they're no longer available to work. And so the things that you want to be looking at, the unavoidable turnover is something that you can't control quite as much, but voluntary turnover and involuntary turnover are definitely two things that you can manage through best HR practices. So to help understand that impact of turnover on your bottom line, the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council has developed a cost of turnover calculator. And this can be accessed for free on our website, and it can help you understand what that impact of turnover is on your farm directly. I've just going to walk through an example that I've done with putting in just some numbers. So the first step that it's going to ask you is, what's the annual base salary of the employee that's leaving? I've picked 30,000. It will calculate the benefits and monthly salary for you, and then it comes out with a daily salary. So that number will be used as we walk forward. Then it's going to ask things like around separation costs, and this is where it starts to take into account the person that's responsible for hiring. So for argument's sake, I've put that person's salary as 50,000. And again, this is something that you can fill in yourself for free on the website, and it will give you data specific to your own operation. But you can see that separation costs, taking into account the amount of time that the person hiring has to put towards the separation process, whether it be updating files, completing the exit interview, and then those separation costs as well. And then we need to look at replacement. So again, the person responsible for hiring, you see their salary there, the hours that they may need to put into finding someone new, screening the resumes, getting the job ads out, doing the interviews, doing references, all that kind of thing. That all comes at a cost of their time, and the cost of turnover calculator will provide you with that figure. Once you do find someone to replace the person that's left, you do need to provide some training. Again, if it's that same person involved with the hiring, you're looking at what their salary looks like and the training hours they need to provide to onboard and provide orientation to the new employee. And then there's the ramp up time of the new employee. So if you're looking at that new employee coming in at the same salary as the person that left, you also need to think about the time it takes for them to get up to speed and be as productive and working fully within the operation as well. When you take a look at all of these different aspects of costs that are incurred, in my example, it would cost my operation over $12,000 for the turnover of one employee. So in a larger operation, if you're constantly replacing employees, you can see how this is really going to have an impact on your bottom line. So how do we keep or retain workers so that we're not incurring that cost? We're going to walk through a number of different aspects that you can do as an employer, but really that investment in retention will lead to having a more effective staff, having employees that are really champions not only of their work, but of your business. And when they're champions of your business, then they're going to be out telling people, their friends, their colleagues, people in their communities and networks about it being a great place to work. That's going to help you attract good talent as well, and good employees, because they're going to hear that it's your operation is a great place to work. And that will, as I said, help attract new hires. It will help build your growth. It will help support you as an employer of choice in your community, and is going to also provide consistent workers that are able to keep that productivity and efficiency up within your operation. So what are some things that you can do to keep or retain your workers? I've tried to break it down into 4 real key themes that are going to help create that work environment that your employees are going to want to stay, they're going to feel valued, the culture is going to be good, and they're going to feel like, they don't want to leave because it is a good place to work. And so those 4 areas that we're going to talk about today are really focused on training and developing, having those HR policies in place, creating a positive work environment, and making sure that you're communicating with your employees. When we look at train and develop your workers specifically, why is it important to train? Training really ties directly to your HR planning, to your succession planning, performance management. So it really is a key part of that overall HR management best practices that we talked about at the beginning. It does help increase productivity. It creates safer work environments. It does reduce turnover, and it also supports employee well-being. And if you are an employee, when your employer is investing in you to train you, whether it be on the job training or something more formal, you feel like you're valued, you feel like your employer is going to wants to see you and develop and improve, keeps you engaged because you're learning new things as well. So what is training? Training can really come in all different types. Orientation and onboarding is a really important aspect of training that needs to be done to set the right tone for your employees as they join your organization. But there's on-the-job training as well, job shadowing, apprenticeships, and then more external type of training that can be as simple as webinars or conferences and short courses, or something more formal like professional designations and post-secondary certificates, diplomas, and degrees. And when we talk about examples of training, it can be really job specific, things that are going to help, for example, around health and safety, WHMIS, biosecurity, any federal or provincial regulations that they need to be, your workers need to be trained in, or maybe you have a new piece of equipment that you need to ensure that they know how to operate properly. It can be professional development, again, skill-specific training, like around, depending on their role in your operation, whether it be around mechanics, communications, management, health, plant health. It really depends on the role that they have, but it can be, again, that skill-specific training. And then there can be personal development training as well. And this is really something that helps support their own mental health, well-being. It can be things like financial management and that type of thing that they can use in their day-to-day life outside of work. When you're thinking about training, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that is organized, that you take time to prepare, so you know what needs to be trained, and how you're going to approach it, what the content's going to be. You make sure that the employee also is aware that you're going to be training them and that this is part of their development as well. Then you're going to deliver the training, again, making sure that that the employee is aware that the training's happening, that it's structured, that you do also take the time to record the training that's been done, as far as, you know, having it in their employee files and things like that. And then once that training's done, you want to make sure that you're following up. Was it effective? Have you seen an improvement in your employees' work in the specific area that they were trained? Are you seeing an impact on the products that are coming out, or whatever it may be that you trained in? But making sure that you follow up and make sure that you are supporting what's been trained, but also making sure it met the mark as well. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of this training section, that onboarding is a really important first step in training your employees. And by taking the time to onboard or to train, provide a new employee with some orientation, that's really going to give them the basic tools that they need to operate within your organization. Providing introductions, making sure they know who's who, making sure they know where to find reference materials or manuals for whatever they're doing. Maybe it's standard operating procedures, that type of thing. Making sure that they're comfortable asking questions, so that if they're uncertain about something, they don't just go ahead and continue working. That they're, you know, comfortable to ask questions and they know the best person to ask. Making sure also that you're providing that training, especially around health and safety, and that you're checking in, and that check-in will happen quite frequently at the beginning, and as weeks go by, you might check in a little bit less, but you're always wanting to make sure that you have that check-in with them. So things to keep in mind during this orientation as well is even if you've hired someone that has worked in a operation similar to your own, it's always very important to take the time to go through things, especially around health and safety, around how you do things in your operation. So if you're working around animals, again, review that with them, make sure that they know, how to manage the animals you have, what the environment is like where the animals are, and that kind of thing. Working around equipment, that they're familiar with the equipment that you have. Again, even if they've worked in similar environments or with similar equipment, making sure that you go through this will ensure that you're not making assumptions about their knowledge, and that they have the right knowledge in place. As well, as I mentioned, it's really important to track that training that you're doing, whether it be that orientation or on-the-job training or anything that you're providing. The AGRA HR Toolkit, which as members of NSFA you have access to for free. There's some really good templates there that you can download and make your own and customize them to the training that you're doing. But by tracking that training, it does a few things. It makes sure that your employee knows that you're taking the training really seriously and that you value the training that's being provided. Also is a good way to connect back when you're doing performance reviews to show what training has been delivered and maybe where there is some gaps and where you need to do some more training, for example. But it's very important to have this in place, and it will make sure that you're keeping track and taking training seriously, which will again help your employee feel like they're valued. There's also some other resources available if you're looking for commodity specific training. AGRA skills that you can find through the CARC website has some commodity specific production training as well. And there's also information there around standards for different occupations and different commodities. So you could use that to measure what you're looking to train and where the gaps may be. So lots of good information available to inform the type of training and development that you're doing for your workers. The next thing we're going to talk about that really has an impact on keeping your workers is HR policies. So HR policies are really those workplace guidelines. It really communicates the values and expectations for your business or your operation. And it is a way of communicating the standards of acceptable behavior. It helps resolve problems because you have a document that you can refer back to. It also gives your employees the structure around how things are done, whether it be around vacation, compensation, that type of thing. And it gives them a really good indication that you operate your farm as a business and that you have those formal structures in place as well. And those well-written HR policies are also going to help you comply with employment standards and legislation, which will reduce your liability and risk, but will also, again, make sure that you're operating in a way that meets legislation and which always contributes to retention as well. Areas that are covered in HR policies, it's everything from talking about HR planning, diversity, inclusion, employment equity, recruitment selection, kind of all those areas of HR management that we talked about at the beginning. Having those outlined in policies will be very helpful, both, as I said, to yourself as an employer and to your employees. Again, you don't have to start from scratch. The AGRA HR Toolkit has an employee handbook, which has all of the policies documented, and there's provincial legislation provided in them as well. You can download this document. It's a Word document. You can customize it and make it your own. You can update it for things that are important to your organization. You know, it's a large document, but it's a great way for you just to be able to say, you know, customize it, put what you need to in it, and then have that handbook so that your employees do have that guide. The third thing we're going to talk about is creating a positive work environment. And really, having a healthy work environment can have a big impact on many areas. It improves physical and mental health. It's good for motivation. It helps with job satisfaction. Employees are often more productive. It saves money in the end because you're ensuring that that your employees are happy. You have less accidents, less errors. It really helps reduce stress, absenteeism, and that type of thing as well. And one of the things around a positive work environment is supporting good work-life balance. This can be really difficult in agriculture, especially when we're, you know, when you're in the busy season, whether that be planting, harvesting, whatever it might be. It can be really hard to support this idea of work-life balance. However, you know, there are ways to look at how you're assigning work, you know, opportunities to take a bit of time off, how you support that time off as well, where you can, providing flexible work schedules. And, you know, maybe that's something that happens more over the course of a year than it does over the course of a season, because, you know, again, you might not be able to be too flexible with work schedules when you're in harvest, for example. But maybe you're communicating to your employees that, yeah, right now, like during harvest season, it's going to be 7 days a week as long as it's not raining. Like, you know, we really have to be dedicated and work hard. But, you know, maybe then when it's quieter, you're, you know, giving paid Fridays off or anything like that, where you're supporting the idea of work-life balance throughout the year. And without that work-life balance, it can end up with conflicts. Workers' physical and mental health can take a toll. It can increase with absenteeism, turnover, and worker stress. And, you know, as operators, this is also very important. It's very difficult as the owner, operator, farmer to think that you also need to look at your own work-life balance. But when you are able to put these practices in place as the employer, as the operator, you also will be healthier, and you'll be able to lead a more positive workplace as well. So when we think about these leaves, the impact of work-life balance, you know, pushing employees or yourself to work all the time without that time off will have a negative, it will end up with a negative impact. It will end up with more absenteeism. And there are legal obligations around leaves and vacation time that you must meet. But if you go beyond those legal obligations and look at where you can provide paid leave, or you're supporting your workers volunteering in the community, you're supporting things like education leave or bereavement leave, these type of things can really help your employees feel valued again and feel like they have a good positive work environment to be in, and it will help with your retention because they're not going to want to leave. Flexible benefits are another thing that can be provided as work-life balance, and these things, you know, sometimes it's easier to just buy the package of benefits if that's what you're providing, but you can take a look at other things that might be beneficial to your employees, and really talking to your employees and hearing what's important to them will help you think about work-life balance things and benefits that you can put in place that is going to benefit them. And really that communication with your employees is very important, because you could be thinking that you're meeting their needs and that you're providing that work-life balance or that positive work environment that they need. But you might be missing the mark if you haven't had a conversation with them or provided them with a way to feed into the policies, the benefits, and the things that you have in place. Another thing that goes a long way to providing that positive work environment is a wellness program. This doesn't have to be complicated. It does not have to cost a lot of money, but it is a way to show your employees that you care about their well-being, whether it be physical or mental. You also want to take a look at what you can do to ensure that your workplace is inclusive, and that, again, it's a workplace where everybody wants to work and feels comfortable and welcome to work. And again, there's some human rights legislation around what you need to have in place. However, you know, going beyond that legislation and doing things, putting things in place that support inclusion in the workplace will be very important as well. Because at the end of the day, you do want to ensure that every employee feels welcomed and that every employee feels included in your policies and in your work environment. Another really important part of that positive work environment is supporting mental health. And you know, this has been a very important topic forever, but certainly in the last year with COVID-19 and dealing with pandemic situation, this becomes even more important than it has been. And you know, not only again for your workers, but for yourselves as well. You want to make sure that that the environment you have will support positive mental health, and also provide the support for people that may need to address mental health issues that may come up. What can you do as an employer? You want to look for ways for early intervention, and that can help minimize the impact. You also want to ensure, again, that you have that supportive environment where you know, resources and talking about it and talking about the importance of good mental health and taking care of your mental health is the environment that you have, but that if someone needs to, that they know how to seek evaluation or know how to look for professional support or services, and that, you know, maybe even in your benefits package, you're providing in the benefits package support for counseling, employee support services, that type of thing. But you know, having open communication and talking about mental health within the workplace is a good way to also provide that support and openness, so your employees know what to do if they are having some challenges with their mental health. And sometimes the challenges may come from, you know, outside stress that they have from personal life. Again, that work-life balance is important, or maybe it's something within the work environment. But talking to your workers, again, you know, it doesn't need to get to the point of it of there being an issue. Having that open communication, talking to your workers, seeing what's working, what's not. You know, creating an environment where they're comfortable to come to you, and maybe they've had something change at home, so you notice that someone's being late when they were never late before. Having that conversation, maybe something's changed at home, maybe they need the scheduling at home has required them to take care of, you know, childcare in the morning, or to drop off at daycare in the morning, or pick up at school at the end of the day. Anything like that that may have changed, you could, by them feeling comfortable to talk to you about that, you can maybe adjust their work schedules, so they're not feeling pressured and feeling like I'm late every day, you know, but I can't say anything, you know, that type of thing, and being accommodating. Again, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to change your work environment to a great deal. Little bits can go a long ways to showing your workers that that you're there for them, and that you're able to adjust to help accommodate them and to help them manage their work stress that may come up as well. And so as we just talked about, that conflict between work and home, work and life demands can really have an impact on your own mental health and your workers' mental health. So having that conversation, being open to flexible work arrangements when it's possible, and providing opportunities for leaves of absences, things like that, again, supports your workers. It takes one less stress away from them because they know that as they manage their stress or any mental health challenges that may come up, that their employer is there for them as well. You also want to make sure that you're addressing poor working conditions that may contribute to not a great work environment. You know, making sure that your work environment is safe and comfortable. You're providing reasonable workloads and goals. Again, that can be really challenging when you maybe are short the number of workers that you need and it's harvest time and things just need to get done. But doing what you can to balance that workload and the pressure that may be on them and yourselves, making sure that they know what their role and responsibilities are so they have that stability and structure and they know what the expectations are. Again, orientation and training, making sure that they have the right information, the right skills to do the work that they're being asked to do, and giving them a bit of variety when you can. Not always possible, but repetition can really cause people to maybe feel bored or feel like they're not being developed, or they're not reaching their full potential. So when you can, give a variety of tasks, provide some training, give them the anonymity to make their own decisions when they can as well, and give them as much control over their tasks and their performance as you can. As well, you do want to make sure that you have information provided to your employees should they need emergency support. And this type of information can be provided in your employee handbook, but it's also a good idea to have information posted around, maybe in the lunchroom, or depending on what your work environment is, but to have information about the importance of taking care of our physical and mental health, and resources available to help support that as well. Other places that you can look for support, Do More Ag is a great foundation that has lots of really good ag-specific mental health resources. You can provide training. As an employer, you can look at taking mental health first aid, which is provided through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Lots of great resources out there, and again, good to share with your employees. Good to think about for yourself as well, because you do need to take care of your own mental health as an employer. And the last area that we're going to touch on today around supporting retention and keeping workers on your farm is how you communicate with your employees. The value of communication with employees goes a long ways. If you're having positive, open communication and you support an environment where people can have good, positive communication amongst each other, you're going to improve team building, growth, innovation, productivity, efficiency, employee loyalty, engagement, and skill development. All those things are going to happen if your employees feel like they can talk to each other, they can talk to you, they can bring new ideas forward, and they're not just going to be shot down, that they can contribute to decision making when that's possible. We can all learn from each other, and so creating an environment where your employees feel like they can contribute in that way and is going to go a long ways. It also, again, reduces turnover, reduces conflict and arguments or problems in the workplace. And when you have an environment where communication is valued and where there's open communication, it does reduce things like errors and accidents as well. So what are ways that you can make sure that you're practicing or supporting a positive environment with good communication from you to your employees as well as amongst your employees? So these are some things, again, they don't have to cost money. It's really how you approach your workplace and how you approach your relationships with each other in the workplace. So doing things like practicing authentic communication, so saying what you mean and following through with what you say, creating that communication friendly culture, as I talked about, having that workplace that there's lots of communication. I know, you know, workers can often feel a lot of uncertainty if they don't know what's going to happen next, or, you know, especially if there's a change that may occur, or, you know, that kind of thing. Keeping them in the loop as much as you can. Clearly, there's some business things that you may not be able to communicate all the time, but keeping them in the loop as much as you can and having good communication is going to help. You can do that through things like weekly team meetings, and maybe that's like a Monday morning. What are we going to do this week? Maybe it's a wrap up at the end of the week. You know, these may be a bit more difficult again during planting or harvesting, but don't put those things on hold because you're too busy. Maybe these team meetings become shorter. You're still going to have to communicate what needs to be done for the week and what the expectations are, and provide them, your employees, with an opportunity to give feedback into that. It can, depending on the size of your operation, you could have things like, you know, getting anonymous feedback, or providing a way for employees to provide information or ideas that they may have, where they don't feel like they have to come directly to you. You know, this one works really more in larger organizations, I would say. Ideally, you have an environment where employees are feeling comfortable enough to provide that feedback directly to you because they're able to communicate. You also want to make sure that when you are hearing that employee feedback, that you're listening. When you can, you're responding to the feedback as well, so they know they're being heard and that their input is valued. When you can, face-to-face communication, make sure that your, you know, body language is open and you know, positive, I guess, so that you're receiving the information that's being given to you, and that you feel that you're giving an approachable body language as well. You know, standing with your arms crossed during a conversation, or it may be, you know, a comfortable way to stand, but it might send the wrong message to a worker that wants to share some information with you. They may feel like you're a bit standoffish and not open to that. So thinking of these type of things as well, because communication isn't just what we say, but it's also lots of nonverbal through our facial expressions, our body language, and even the tone of our voice as well. And no one less is more. This one's a little bit hard as well, but you know, you want to make sure that you're not over communicating and micromanaging, I guess, is maybe where this might come in. Taking time to listen properly, personalizing your communication, so making sure that what you are talking about is done in a way that meets your audience, and taking time to also have a little bit of non-work discussion, you know, engaging them in social conversation and that kind of thing as well can help you get to know them and help build those relationships as well. And what I will say as well, sometimes your employees, their first language may not be your first language. And so when you can, provide communication materials in the language, in their first language. For example, if you have temporary foreign workers whose first language is Spanish, there's lots of resources out there now around health and safety and employee handbooks and that type of thing that have been translated to Spanish. So, you know, and government resources as well for health and safety, workplace health and safety and that kind of thing. You can make sure that you're, you know, if you're posting things around your operation as reminders, you can post those in English and you can post them in Spanish, for example. So at the end of the day, really, when we think about you know, what it takes to keep your employees and to make sure that they're going to want to keep working in your work environment. It's really comes down to being kind. Everybody meets fighting a hard battle, but if you're open and empathetic and willing to listen and create that environment where people are feeling welcomed and comfortable, you're going to really not only keep the workers that you have, they're going to be happier. They're going to want to tell people how great it is to work in your work environment, and others will want to join as well. You're going to learn a lot from them. They're going to bring new ideas. You might be doing things differently or increasing your productivity, maybe streamlining some of the work that you do because you're hearing what they have to say as well. And as I mentioned, you're not left alone with trying to put some of these things in place that can really help support that good work environment. The AGRA HR Toolkit has everything you need as far as information, tools, templates, and that kind of thing. And as members of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture, you do have free access to the HR Toolkit. You go to the website, click on Subscribe Now, click on Buy Now, and then it will take you to the page where you can put in the discount code, and as you finish the registration, you won't be needing to pay the membership. We're very happy that the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture is a partner of CARCS, and this is something that as a partner and as a member, you're able to access throughout the year. And if you have any questions or require any more information, by all means, don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm happy to answer your questions or provide you with direction or resources that may help answer the questions if I'm not able to.